All right, here we go. Welcome everybody to the Dutch Closure Meetup number. I did it again. I forgot the number. We are in the 130s anyway. So that means 130 plus consecutive months of Closure Meetup in the Netherlands and also over the internet, since we started with remote sessions since the big giant Corona pandemic. Tonight, we are going to have, for the second time in a row, on stage Calva, the project that allows you to do closure development on Visual Studio Code. And we are going to look into core logic. So we are going to explore a bit into core logic. I think we did have a session about core logic at this meetup, but that was years ago. So it's definitely time for a refresher. And I'm gonna now give the stage to Stefan, which is our presenter tonight, to introduce what the content of tonight will be. So Stefan, be my guest.
Thanks, Carlo. Hi, everyone. Good evening. Awesome to be able to be here. Normally, I can't make it on Wednesdays, but thanks to Corona and online meetups, I now can actually attend on Wednesday. Every disadvantage has its advantages. So indeed, today I would like to spend some time talking about core logic. And this being an online meetup, you need some kind of tooling. So I thought to use Calva and Visual Studio Live Share. It's not necessarily meant to explain all the details of those, but of course, please feel free to ask any questions. In general, by the way, just interrupt me, just unmute and interrupt me whenever you want. I always enjoy interactive sessions, so please don't feel don't feel shy. Okay, yeah, I guess step one is having Visual Studio Code on your machine. I'm assuming not everybody has it already. Is that correct? So
I have it, but I don't remember if I haven't ran it since the last meetup, so I might be a little rusty on it.
Okay, so it has auto updates. So if you just launch it, then it should after some time it should auto update. For those who don't have it yet, here's the link where you can download it. Yeah, it's a bit more difficult to get to talk to each other this way. People are muted, so I'm gonna assume that people have it already. If not, please tell me and I'll wait. Right? We're not in a hurry that I know of. So to me, it's much more important that everybody can follow. A 12-year-old MacBook Pro. Oh wow. That might be a challenge. Unfortunately, there is actually a quite recently they launched a way to do live share over the internet in the browser without having Studio yourself. But unfortunately, Calva doesn't work in that setup. So you really need the actual VS Code. I'm also going to share my screen. So if you absolutely are unable to use VS Code tonight, then you can at least see my screen as a fallback. So let me start sharing then. I'll move Jitsi over to my other display. I don't promise from now on, I can't promise that I will actually see the comments. Oh, this is unfortunate. I think I will have to restart my browser because I didn't give it access to the screen yet. Sorry guys, I will have to quickly leave and rejoin. 1 second.
That is fine. While we wait for Stefan to be back, so is there anyone who is rushing to install Visual Studio Code, or are we just more or less set up as we are right now?
I have it set up. How do we join the session? That's what I can't remember how to do.
Yeah, I guess Stefan will tell us. So
Yeah.
I'm gonna wait for him to give us instructions.
Yes,
Okay.
indeed. Yeah. So let's see if screen sharing works now. Share. I think it's working.
Yep.
Yeah, I can.
Okay, great.
I can see it.
So then I'll launch VS Code. So, just for those who didn't do so yet, there's a tab over here where you can see all your extensions. This is where you can install both Calva and VS Code Live Share. So please also install those two extensions if you don't have them yet. You'll probably need to restart your VS Code after that. So I'll give you a little bit of time to check that you have those running. Well, I get a bit of coffee. Okay, so let me show you how I start my live share session. This is going to be the host of the live share session. There's a live share tab here after you have enabled the plugin, and a share button. Clicking the share button will ask me to sign in. There are currently two sign-in methods, Microsoft and GitHub. I'll be using the GitHub sign-in method. This takes me to a browser. And oh, by the way, Carlo, can I ask you to keep an eye on the chat, and maybe if people ask questions there, then interrupt me if needed?
Yep. So we already have one question actually. Eugene reports an error message on failed to install support for joining sessions using a browser link. You can still join sessions manually.
Okay, that's fine. I'll share the URL in Jitsi in a moment, and then you should be able to just copy paste it into Studio.
Okay.
Okay, so I signed in on using my GitHub account, and I click allow, and this takes me back to Studio. It says, hey, there's a URL being opened. Do you want to allow that? Yes, sure. And I'm signed in. And it's actually already started the collaboration session also because I signed in. And there's now a link here. I have prepared this, of course, pretty well, but I'm also doing it for the first time this way. So I'm now here in a second browser window, and I'm going to join here. So in a moment, you'll also be able to do this yourself, but let me first show you how I do it. Again, also here, I go to live share, and now I click join. And now I get the option to either sign in or continue as anonymous. And for tonight, it is fine if you just continue as anonymous. That is okay. You don't have to have a GitHub or Microsoft account. So also here, I'm going to continue anonymously. And I'll call myself the rabbit because you'll be following me. And then now here, because it's in my clipboard, it already shows the live share URL. So I hit enter again. And now it's joining the session. It says waiting for host approval. So I'll move over to my other display. And here I can accept the anonymous guest. Normally, when you're signed in, this manual accepting of guests is not needed, people can just join. But in this case, because it's anonymously, I have to approve. So now I'm signed in. Here you see the workspace. Oh, what's going on? Is there a loop somehow? Left the collaboration session. Oh, that's interesting. Okay, I think it's working now. Let me double check that it's working. I'll open a source code file here, and I also see it here. So that is also what you are going to be able to do. I'll now paste the URL in Jitsi, and you can either use the live share button here and then join, or you can use the command palette of Visual Studio Code and then here a live share join. Both work the same way, and then you can paste this URL. So please go ahead and do that, and then I should be able to see you pop in. If you have any issues, just it's fine to unmute and ask, right?
What is the shortcut usually for opening up the command palette?
On my Mac, it's Command Shift P. So I suppose on Windows, probably Control Shift P. I see some people joining. Actually, just Jay is joining. Jasper. Is anybody having trouble joining?
I'm just trying to sign in, so
Sure, take your time.
for some reason it's using the wrong Chrome instance.
You can also do it anonymously, Carlo, if you like.
I know, I'm just trying. I'm really trying hard to make it work. Okay. It doesn't really recognize that I signed in. Okay.
So Eugene is asking, what's the shortcut to evaluate the line you're on in the open file? Well, currently there is no REPL running. So currently you cannot evaluate anything yet. In a moment, I will start my REPL, and then you will be able to connect to my REPL.
I see.
So that's how things work with LiveShare in Calva. The host has a REPL running, and other people can connect to the REPL on the host.
Thanks.
Yep. There was actually a pull request that I made myself for Calva. And Jasper and I actually, since September, we have been using Calva and LiveShare all day, every day, basically. So.
Yeah.
Oh wow.
It's really useful to be able to use the same REPL. It makes it a lot easier.
Yeah. Okay, I see Carlo is also in. Hi, Carlo.
Hi.
Okay, so just to get a bit of a feel for what's going on and what your expectations and background is, I now opened a file called survey.txt. But maybe first I should show you this. There is a there's a little pin over here, and that pin has basically it allows you to follow somebody. And if you click that, and then select the rabbit in this case, because that's where I'll be doing the session, then your VS Code instance will follow whatever I do. So when I switch to another file, you will switch with me when you're following me. Oh, I see Mikhail has also joined. Hey, Mikhail. We're just getting started. You can still participate if you'd like by opening VS Code and live share connecting to the URL that I posted in Jitsi a bit ago.
Okay.
So in this file here over here, survey.txt, I put a few questions, and where I was hoping that you could each answer the questions by just typing a number from between 1 and 4 behind the question. Or actually, it's not a question, it's more like a statement. Where 1 is completely disagree, 2 is somewhat disagree, 3 is somewhat agree, and 4 is completely agree. And it's just for me to get a little bit of an idea about how much I should explain things. I'll also do this myself. Okay, I think everybody is now able to edit the same file at the same time, using their own development environment. That's actually one of the cool things about VS Code. You're all using your own configuration, colors, fonts, I don't know what, but we're still working in the same workspace. Minus infinity, wow. I don't even know where that key is on my keyboard. So I guess I don't have to explain what a Sudoku is this time. I have actually done this presentation 1.5 years ago for a very international audience where some people had no clue what a Sudoku is. So, but just as a refresher, this is a Sudoku. I asked because we'll be solving a Sudoku using core logic. Everybody has at least an idea about what logic programming is. Some have lots of experience and some have a little experience with VS Code, and obviously the same for LiveShare. Most of us are at least somewhat experienced Clojure developers, and I guess nobody is dying to do something else at the moment. That's good. So let's get started, man. Let's see, just my notes. Okay, right. So I'm going to start my REPL now. I'm going to do that over here in my other. Well, it doesn't really matter why. So in Calva, what's the check-in command? Keyboard shortcuts, you can find those out on your own. I'll now check in, and then it detects that there is a deps.eden file, so it offers me to do a Clojure CLI type of check-in. I'll do that, and it's now checking in. And then after a bit, when the check-in is complete, LiveShare will offer me to share the REPL port. Here you go. So I can now click allow, and then here in LiveShare you can see that the REPL server is now shared. So on your end, I'll go over to my host, guest, the rabbit. What you can do is you can connect to my REPL. So in Canva, there's a command: connect to a running REPL in the project. This one. Control Option C, Control Option C on the Mac. I'm not sure about the keyboard shortcuts on Windows, but it's a REPL in the project. When you click that, you should see this pop up. And then also, like I did on the host, you choose Clojure CLI. And then it detects the proper port. A local host is fine. You may find it surprising, but it's because the port is mapped on your local machine. So you can just accept what it says there, and then you should be in. If you then switch to a Clojure file, you can you can type some Clojure code and then hit Alt Enter or Option Enter on the Mac, and then it will evaluate that.
Nice. It works.
Good. Is everybody still with me?
So far, so good.
Awesome. Oh, where are you? Okay, so that's a bit about the basics of LiveShare. Because we're now with so many people in the same session, we will have to probably agree on some housekeeping rules, let's say. This file, core.clj, is where I will be doing my my workshop. And you will be asked, if you like, to do some small exercises. So what I'd like to ask you is to each of you create a file inside this folder source Kojo logic with your name or alias as a file name, so that you have kind of your own playground in the project, right? And then I will clear out this stuff.
It's interesting that I created my file and it created a DNS declaration, but missing the first part, Kojo logic prefix.
Oh, okay.
Hmm.
Not sure why that is actually. That may either be because I didn't set up the project correctly, or it may be a bug in Clojure LSP, because Calva is using Clojure LSP for this feature, if I recall correctly.
I see that the others have a similar issue.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think for the REPL, it doesn't really matter, actually, by the way. Things should work anyway. But as a starting point, you probably are best off copying my file, the contents of my file, and then work inside that, and then of course change the namespace again back to what it was for your file. But I'll also try something that I didn't have the opportunity to work with so many people at the same time. So what I'll try to do is to have all of you here. Nice. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah. Nice. I have all of you. I can see what all of you are doing at the same time. Not confusing at all. Okay. Any questions so far?
I'm just commenting on. I'm always just without any words to describe how everything is actually working flawlessly.
Yeah, it's quite robust nowadays. Okay, so then let's see if I told everything I wanted to tell so far. Yeah, so what I tend to do when I work with Jasper, then I have usually two panes side by side, at least two. The left one is where I'm working, and the right one I'm following whatever Jasper is doing. And I leave that pane alone because VS Code will be switching back and forth between files as Jasper does it. And then it becomes quite impossible for me to work in that pane, but I still like to see what he's doing. There's a command for that in VS Code. You can follow a participant to the side on Mac command option /. So if you do that, then it will open a new pane on the side where you follow the participant that you select. And again, select me, the rabbit, please, not Stefan, but the rabbit. And then you can see what I'm doing and try things yourself at the same time. Okay, let's get started. Okay, so everybody indicated that they pretty much understand what logic programming is about. But I'll still give a bit of a description about the way I look at it. It's basically about setting up a set of rules that a solution has to satisfy, and then having the system come up with the matching solution automatically. So you specify what you are after and not how you want to accomplish things. So how does this work in core logic? Well, let's start with the first statement. It looks like this. There's a run star, and run star means find all matching solutions. The Q here is a variable, but not this normal variable. It's a logic variable. It's a thing from core logic, something that core logic knows about and understands how to deal with. Then we say here equals Q1. This equals is not the closure core equals. In the top of the namespace, I excluded that explicitly, and then I refer to the equals from core logic. Normally, maybe you want to do core logic using an alias or something like that, but for now, this reads a little bit better. So when I evaluate this, I am now using the command evaluate to comment, so that you can also see in my file what the output is. Then you see 1. So a list of 1 actually, because there is all the solutions are just one solution, namely 1. So this makes sense, right? I hope they're not really surprised. No surprises here. So yeah, of course, when I do that with 42, it's 42. Core logic is able to be quite clever about how it matches things. So, for example, if I say I have 2 maps, one where A is Q and B is 2, and one where A is 1 and B is 2, and then they have to be equal, then core logic knows how to determine that Q must be 1. that's the only way how these constraints can be fulfilled. You can have multiple of these goals. That's what they're called, goals. So I can say that A must be Q, B must be 2. Sorry, I can have one goal where I say that these maps have to be the same, so A, Q, and A1, and at the same time B, R, and B2. So obviously this will evaluate to the vector 1, 2, because 1 is Q and 2 is R, right? It prints its solution is a vector. So far so good. There are a few
Yeah.
primitives in core logic that have all funny names. For example, membro and conso and conde, and I don't know why that is actually, but it makes them easy to distinguish from the normal functions that you already know. So what I'm saying here is that Q has to be a member of the vector 1, 2, 3, 4. And I want all solutions. So there's going to be 4 solutions, namely 1, 2, 3, and 4. They are all solutions to this constraint, right? I can also put the variable in a different place. I can say 42 has to be a member of a list that contains a logic variable Q. And then it knows how to find out that Q is 42. Right? Just going through some basics. I'll have you do a small exercise yourself in a moment. You can also define constraints yourself. So let me define a constraint that a number must be even. So I use def_nc, that's a primitive from core logic, and then the name of the constraint and a variable, and then I use the standard closure even function. This is not from core logic, this even. So this just returns a Boolean. And then I can use this when I do when I try to satisfy a goal. So I can now say I have a variable that must be in the range from 1 to 10, and it must be even. So here I'm using my new constraint, and then you see it comes up with 0, 2, 4, 6, 8. Yeah, range of 10 is of course 1 to 9. So you can define your own constraints like that. There is a sub-package, core logic FD, and FD stands for finite domain, as far as I know. Should probably have looked that up, but and there you can do some optimizations. So how do you say? Naively, you could do something like this. You could say run member of range 10,000 and on all even numbers, and then in this case I'll just time how long that takes to evaluate. So it's now running. It's still running. I'll let it continue. There you go. Elapsed time 11 seconds. So I'll now use FD, finite domain. So I'll create an interval using FD, and then I say FD in Q that interval. So basically I'm saying conceptually the same as I'm saying here, but now using the FD package. And when I run this, it takes 432 milliseconds, right? So that's quite a dramatic optimization. You can also do some funny things with collections. So let me quickly go through that. You can also use this as a kind of cheat sheet, right, later on. So the normal closure cons operator, you all know that one, right? There is also a no. There's also a core logic variant of that one, which is named cons-o. So can anybody guess what the result of this will be? Just shout.
One
Oh, let's see.
or,
Yeah, very well.
or the list of one. Yeah.
Yeah. So one is the only solution. Yeah, indeed. So when I do something like this, I do a cons of 1 and a q, and then the result is 1, 2, 3, 4, then q can only be 2, 3, 4, right? So also there, you can put the q basically wherever you like. Now I'm putting it here, and still it works. Q must be 3 if this constraint has to be satisfied. Now you can have conjunctions and disjunctions of constraints. In other words, you can have a situation where all goals must be satisfied. So in this case, Q must be 3 and Q must be 6. So what's the outcome, do you think?
Empty list.
Empty vector.
Yes, excellent. If you want to say either one of those two, then you can use conde. Then it says 3 and 6 satisfied, and 2 solutions for the variable q. One solution is 3, one solution is 6. So just as a slightly more complicated example, I here have 2 logic variables, x and y. And then I say conso x, y, 1, 2, 3, 4. In other words, an x followed by a list y must be 1, 2, 3, 4. And also x and y are equal and x is 2. So because this is a conde, that means that either of those constraints has to be satisfied. So then I get 2 solutions. One is where x is 1 and y is 2, 3, 4. That's the first constraint. And the other solution is where they are both 2. That's the second constraint, right? Makes sense? Okay, final piece before the first assignment exercise. Instead of run star, you can also have run, and then a number that is the upper limit of the amount of solutions that you want to get. So in this case, I'm saying I have an interval, and I want all even numbers, and it's quite a big interval, but because I say run 7, I only get the first 7 solutions, right? Okay, now for your assignment, can you try to find all solutions to the equation A times B is 2172? Using the building blocks that I've used so far. And the note that I put here is about using the finite domain interval instead of memro. So again, please don't hesitate to just unmute and share questions, observations, anything.
Do we have to create our own constraint, custom constraint for this?
Yes. So do you have an idea about what it should roughly do, that constraint?
Well, I guess you can make it work in different ways. So it can do the multiplication. I guess no clue actually.
Okay, that's not surprising, because this is a very different way of thinking than most of us are used to. So a constraint is basically something Boolean, right? A predicate kind of like thing. So something that you can put in a run as something that has to constrain the solution space. So the constraint that I came up with, if you don't want to see my solution yet, just don't look, is this one. Actually, the hint that I put about performance was also about being clever about the actual intervals that you use. It's enough if you find all unique solutions. So you don't have to have both variables that you'll need, A and B, run through the entire search space.
Can constraints be vargs?
I would expect not. Let's see if I can find the real answer. No, I don't think so. Actually, no, I don't think so.
Okay.
Yeah, for me it's quite difficult to judge with because I don't have any real feedback from you guys by looking at you guys how fast I should go. So I'm inclined to start showing my own solution right now, but I also see some people making good progress towards their own solutions. So I'll wait a little bit more, but please give me feedback also about when I should speed up or slow down.
There's actually a question on the chat on
Okay.
Jitsi.
I expect that you can constrain A and B to be less than 2173, namely C+1. Would constraints make it run faster if it reduces the numbers it has to check? The answer is yes. So the smaller the search space, the faster it is. And that's actually what I hinted at here, because when you want to see a multiplication between two numbers, you don't have to have them both run from 1 to the upper limit. You can have one of them run from 1 to the square root and the other from the square root to the upper limit, basically. Oh, I see that. Michiel already figured that out himself. Very well, Michiel. Well done. Is it working, Michiel?
I think it's working. Yeah, it takes about 2 seconds.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well done. Have you used it before, CoreLogic?
It's been a long time ago.
Right. I'm impressed.
Maybe in the beginning of Clojure, like 10 years ago or something. So.
Right. So I'll now paste in my own solution, which is actually a little bit more generic in that I also included C as a variable, and then I here constrain C to be the requested solution. So I can also make C anything I want it to be. I can even remove the constraint, this one, then it will find all multiplications, basically. I'm not sure if it's useful. Oh, what's happening? Something funny is happening. Is the REPL still working, guys? I'm not having any results here.
It seems to be working for me, at least. I don't know what that means.
Let's see. I think there's a syntax error in my file. Oh yeah, there you go. Okay. Anybody wants to have a bit more time, or shall I go on? Actually, I'm not sure how you guys are used to doing this, but if you want to have a small break, for example, to get a coffee or something. Carlo, how are you used to doing this?
There's no such a thing as the norm, I'd say. We might have a natural little break, a few seconds, about 20 past when, or maybe 10 or 15 past 8, because the recording will stop and I will have to restart it again. But that's last time we asked for that, nobody wanted to have a break. That's all I can tell.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Unless somebody shouts now, I'll go on. So I'm going to introduce. Yeah, sure.
Yeah. Sorry. Can I ask? What's wrong with my solution? It doesn't work. It's really dumb. Like it just says, checks if it's a product or not, but it doesn't return the. It returns like a function rather than returning the answer.
Right. So One thing that's wrong, at least, is that you're using an is here,
Mm-hmm.
and in core logic you're using is.
Ah, okay. Okay.
So you're using the wrong function to do this.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Maybe I should
Yeah.
have used the namespace alias to include these, and then in that case I could have typed l/is.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, thanks. You can go ahead. I don't
Yeah.
want to
Okay.
delay it anymore. Yeah.
By the
No,
way,
that's fine. That's fine.
by the way, I used the single question mark, but I just had a predicate. But that did work somehow.
The single equals. You mean?
Yeah. So if you scroll up, yeah.
Ah, right. Oh, sorry. That's. Oh, wait a minute. Oh, I'm not reading it right. Yeah, it should be actually. That one should be a single one. You're right, Michiel. Thanks. It should be a single one. So Eugene, I misled you. This should be a single one, and then. Okay, so basically, in your solution, it doesn't know anything about A and B. It doesn't know if there are strings, if there are keywords, if there are streams from the internet.
Okay.
So that's why in my solution I constrain A and B to a range of numbers.
I see.
Yeah, makes sense. Okay, so all these Q's and A's and B's and C's and X's and Y's are called logic variables in core logic. And you can also dynamically create logic variables. And then you use the function lvar. Lvar creates a new logic variable. So just as a super stupid, dumb example, I have a normal closure let to create a logic variable. Oh, by the way, all my solutions are also in GitHub. So if you want to see later what exactly I have done and so on, I'll just give you a link to my GitHub repo, and then you can also all see it there. Okay, so I create a logic variable, and then I do a run with another logic variable Q, which is instantiated in the way we were doing so far. And then I say that V and Q have to be equal, and V has to be 3. So obviously this means that Q is also 3, right? It's a bit convoluted when you do it like this, but why is this useful? Now I can do things like this. And here is the first step towards Sudokus. I can create 9 logic variables. Why 9? This is going to be one row of the Sudoku, right? So I now say I create 9 logic variables, and then I just say that Q has to be those variables, and then I see this. And the _0, _1, and so on, that's core logic way of saying a logic variable. This is just a unconstrained logic variable. So this is just to show you that I've here created 9 logic variables, right? So now we're going to use that. First, I want a way to constrain those logic variables to a domain, namely the numbers 1 through 9. So I create a normal closure function, defen. It's sometimes confusing that you're working both in the closure domain and the core logic domain, let's say. But then this is just a regular closure function. And it accepts a core logic variable and constrains that logic variable to the domain 1 to 9. Right?
You could also have used member, you right? Or
Yes.
something like this.
Member row, yeah. But that goes back to the
Oh,
example that I had when I introduced the FD.
yeah. Oh, yeah.
It's so much quicker.
But does FD not have something like member, FD member or something?
I'm not sure.
Okay.
Yeah, the documents are all on Clojure docs, so that's what I use for my source of truth. Not all the functions in CoreLogic are actually documented there. And also for me, it's not always clear what is the best one to use.
And why can't you just say FD in V and then Clojure set, maybe? Does it also accept that? Why do you have to say domain?
I don't think so, but I don't think the Clojure set will work, but I'm not sure.
Okay.
You would have to try. Yeah. Yeah. So that's also why I said, yeah, you're not here with us yet at that point, but I'm by no means a CoreLogic expert. I'm more like a beginner, I would say. But I find it an intriguing tool that has its uses and is nice to have in your toolbox, and at least know when to dive deeper into. But I'm not an expert. Okay, so I have now this constraint to domain function, right? And I'm going to use that like this. Like before, I create 9 logic variables. And then I do a run with 3 solutions. I only want the first 3 solutions, where I first say that Q is those logic variables, and then I say every G, and that's CoreLogic again. So every goal. So basically what I say is that every one of these vars has to satisfy that constraint. It's a bit intuitively, it's a bit like a map, a normal map. So over this list of logic variables, I map the function constraint to domain, kinda. Right? I see people looking a bit confused.
What I'm confused about is why you say equals Q vars. So Q has to be equal to all the vars, or?
Yeah. And then for all
or is Q the set of all the configuration of all the vars? Like because the result is a list of all the outcomes for every var. So Q is just.
Yeah, so Q is the solution that it has to compute, right? And I say give me 3 solutions. So this Q is one solution, this Q is a second solution, and this Q is a third solution, right?
Right.
So every Q is indeed, in this case, 9 variables.
Yeah, it's all the assignments, all the possible assignments to those variables.
Yes.
Yeah.
Clear?
Well, first 3 in this case. But.
Yeah, exactly. So the complete run star would be very big. Let's not do that.
Yeah.
Okay, so are you ready for another small assignment? Add a constraint to the previous run that causes all numbers from 1 to 9 to be used in each solution. In other words, and this is a hint, all numbers have to be distinct. So here you see 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1. That should not be part of the solution space. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 is fine, but no duplicates. Everything has to be distinct. So you can copy these 2 functions indeed, the constraint to domain and this thing, and then you can modify it in your own file.
Is the REPL still running, or did I kill it?
It's still running. When I had that same question before, it was because I had a syntax error in my file.
Okay.
I was missing some parentheses, some close parentheses. I think you're also missing the close parentheses. Oh no, you're not using the comments.
Okay. Yeah.
Recording is on.
There we go.
Yep. We're back. Nothing has happened, dear watcher. How are you doing? Does it make sense? Do you know what you have to use or can use from CoreLogic FD?
See.
And my wording in the assignment is a hint, my choice of words. Any questions? I see at least one person being at least very close to the solution. But I think there are also a few confused people. Take the opportunity to learn. I mean, you're not supposed to understand this already.
Yeah. I think I was just trying to read the documentation from FD, and I can see that there's not so many documented functions.
Right, that's true. And you can skip the ones that are not documented. Oh, Richard also had to leave. That's too bad. Menno has a question. Does the order of the constraints matter? I'm not sure. I don't think it matters for the solutions. It may matter for the performance. Oh, Carlo, you are now changing my file.
Oh, I apologize.
Yes, Eugene, you are looking at the right thing. Oh, it works already? Well done.
Yeah, is this right? Yeah, is that all there is to it?
Yeah,
Okay.
basically, yeah. Well, not basically, just yes.
Oh, okay, great. I thought I didn't think it would be that easy. So I had so much trouble with the last one.
Yeah. Yeah, well, so, yeah, I think that's one of the takeaways that I had for core logic and logic programming, that sometimes with just a few characters you can do extremely powerful stuff.
Yeah.
So looking at what everybody's doing, I think most of us have a solution by now. So, and they all look quite similar to mine, which is this one. So basically you're just saying that the vars have to be distinct. Easy. Okay, moving on towards a Sudoku solution, solver, I mean. So, next step. We need some more pieces of the puzzle, because when you solve a solution, you get some hints, right? Let me bring up the example. Solution looks like this, and all the empty squares are the ones that you have to fill in, and the other ones are what I call hints, right? So I'm going to model that by making the blanks 0 in my algorithm. So that's basically what this says. And the spots that have to be filled in are 0, and the rest are the hints. So I'm making a utility function to bind vars to hints. So basically, it's a normal closure function. I call it bind, for lack of a better name. And it takes a var and a hint. And then if the hint is not 0, or yeah, maybe this is a potential hint. I'm not sure if I can. Actually it's just a number. So if the digit is 0, then if it's not 0, then apparently it was a hint, and then I bind the var using the core logic is this. I bind the var to that digit. If it is 0, then this just returns succeed, which in core logic terminology means it's a constraint that always succeeds. Or in other words, it doesn't constrain anything. So zeros don't constrain anything, but if it's not 0, then it does constrain. Then that var is constrained to that digit, whatever you pass in. Right? So how I'm using this? Does everybody know, by the way, the closure use of map where you have multiple collections? Since you're all quite experienced in closure, I think you do know this. So this form of map where you pass in 2 collections calls the function, in this case times, with 1 element from each collection every time, right? So 1 times 10, 2 times 20, 3 times 30. Right? So that use of map I'm now using to define this bind all. So I'm going to remove this again, just for brevity. So I now give a list of vars and a list of hints, and then for each of those vars and hints I do a bind, and then I say here and star, which is a core logic function to say that everything that is in here has to be satisfied. It's a logical AND. So now we can do a run like before with hints. So if I have a vector of hints where there is a 5 and a 3 and the rest is not constrained, then I can have a run, and then I use this bind all that I just defined, and the rest is the same as before. Oh, I have to evaluate this first. Bind. I was copy and pasting, but not evaluating. So now it comes up with solutions, just 3, because I asked to give 3, where the second number is a 5, and then this one is a 3 in all solutions, right?
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. I suppose you want to put a constraint. Okay. Meanwhile, just a question from the chat about the order of the constraints that we were talking about before. I suppose you generally want to put the constraint that most heavily limits the input first. Question mark. Makes sense, I would say, but I'm not sure if that matters.
If it works the same as Datomic, then it makes sense because Datomic is sensitive to this. And unless you have some kind of query planner or something that can figure this out, I do think the order will matter.
Yeah, I would not be surprised. Yeah. Okay, so we have now one row with hints that we can satisfy, right? So let's scale this up to multiple rows. So again, I create a little utility function, a normal closure function rows, which takes a list of numbers and partitions it into rows. Just simple utility. And now I introduce rows here. So I type my hints in one vector because I use this rows function. And now I create as many vars as I have elements in this vector, right? So 18 in this case. And then I say not just that the vars have to be constrained to the domain, but also that the rows have to be distinct. So now I get this, and then it's not really formatted in a way that you can easily read it. But as you can see, all of these rows have now distinct numbers while still matching those hints, right? The 7 and the 9 and the 5 and the 3. Right, so I expanded the hints to work over multiple rows, basically. We also have to do this for columns, right? So an easy way of doing things over columns that you already can do over rows is by transposing the matrix. So transposing means basically mirroring it over the diagonal, right? So columns become rows and rows become columns. Right, so by doing that, I can use functions that work on rows on columns because the columns become rows. In Clojure, there's a trick to transpose matrices. I'm not going to explain how it works. It's a bit of a mind bender. It's actually one of the examples also in the documentation of map, and it uses the form of map where you supply multiple collections. But take it from me, this transposes a matrix. So, for example, if I transpose 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, it becomes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, right? Rows become columns and columns become rows. Right? Okay, so now we have a full Sudoku challenge. This is going to be the Sudoku that we're going to solve. We're not there yet in terms of building blocks, but we are progressing nicely. So extend the query above. So I mean this one. To not only cause all rows to contain distinct numbers, but also all columns. And the amount of complexity that you have to add is again pretty small. It's not a big change. Michiel, CLJ Kondo is giving you a hint. So, is it roughly clear what you have to do? Any questions?
Yeah, it makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Eugene, are you asking for hints or what? You're on mute, by the way. I'm not sure if you want to say something.
Sorry. Yeah. No, I was just making kind of sanity checking things.
Okay.
Thanks.
I think I'm not sure if you're working in a comment block or not. You're not. Okay.
No.
It's always something to watch out for when you don't work in a command block when you do this, because right now if you evaluate the namespace, it will start running all those things that are in the entire file, right? So for tonight, that's fine. But that's why I'm doing all that I'm doing with you in a command block, because I don't want, when I evaluate the namespace, I don't want all these queries to be run. Let's see. I think Michiel has solved it. Carlo is pretty close, I think. Some other people are so close. Just continue if you want, but I'll start. I'll put in my solution. It looks like this. See some Eugene. I think you have selected the text in my file.
Oh, sorry.
That's fine, but it looks a bit. Yeah. Thanks. Okay, so I did a bit of partition 9 first, blah blah blah. That's just to have it printed a bit nicer. So basically, we just add here a declaration for calls, which is the transposition of the rows. And then, like we said, every row has to be distinct. We also say every column has to be distinct. That's it. Easier than you thought, eh?
Yep.
That's nice for a change. Things can be easy sometimes. Now for maybe a little bit harder puzzle. And if you don't feel, if it's basically, it's getting late on the evening, right? So if you don't feel like solving it anymore, just feel free to wait out the solution, right? So in a Sudoku, you don't also have to make sure that these 3 by 3 squares are distinct, right? So anybody want to, if you want a private hint, I'll paste a little bit of a utility function in your file that you can use. Just let me know if you want that. Oh, too bad, Michiel. Thanks for attending. See you next time.
Yeah, but this time I think I'm fairly guaranteed to take like to need a couple of hours to come up with the functions to split the hints into the right pieces.
Yeah. I'll just paste them in my file. 2 utility functions. These. A get square that takes some rows and a coordinate, and then basically runs x from that coordinate to the coordinate plus 3 and y also, and then gets all the elements x and y, and then squares uses that to do it for x, 1, 3, and 6. Yeah, range 0, 9, 3 is evaluates to 0, 3, 6, and y also. So basically, this utility function squares gives you all the squares that are in the Sudoku. The squares as in the 3 by 3 squares. So in the real Sudoku, the thick bordered squares. Maybe if there is an easier way to do this, I'm not sure, but yeah, Eugene, sorry?
Oh, yeah, and then you just do distinct on all of those squares.
Basically, yeah. You're seeing the pattern. Huh?
Yeah. Yeah. It's nice to see how things are repeating. You can reuse the same tools.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Menno mentions in the chat. There's also a Sudoku X where the diagonal is also considered. Indeed. There is even also something like something that's called an Sudoku, where basically the well, I'll just show you. Let's see. This is an Sudoku.
Oh. Why not?
What? You all know the video "What," right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Menno, as an exercise to the reader, solve this in a way so that you can actually in code specify the pattern, and then it will use the pattern to make the solution. And actually, I did this. It's in my Git repo.
Okay.
So I did something like this. I defined the shape that it has to use, and then I defined a solver that takes that into account.
I see. I would imagine you will find plenty of hints that will not lead to a valid solution, right? In the Sudoku.
Sorry, hints that will?
Not allow for a solution.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Same for a normal Sudoku, right?
Yeah.
So maybe it's also an interesting challenge to create a Sudoku generator, which should be pretty easy with this code, right? I mean, in the beginning, I showed you how these things are basically you can put the variable in any place, right? With the where did I show that? Here.
Yeah.
So I didn't try this myself, but conceptually I would expect it to be doable once you have this solver to also create a generator based on core logic.
Right.
Pretty much, yeah.
You could use the solver to validate just generate every possible.
Exactly.
Yeah. And then see if there's one solution, and look for something that with fewer solutions, then it'll be harder. Once many solutions, those are for beginners.
Actually, I think an implicit rule of Sudokus is that there's only one solution.
Oh, I see.
So I don't think it's explicit, and it doesn't necessarily conceptually have to be. But I think when you find a Sudoku in a book or in a newspaper or something, then there's only one solution, I think. And they make it easier by giving you more hints.
I see. Maybe there's a theorem about that. Like maybe there's only one solution for. Well, no, that can't be right. If there's no hints, well, there's probably some relation between the number of solutions and the number of hints. The ways that you constrain it.
Yeah, probably. Yeah. So this concludes what I prepared for tonight. I'll give you the link to the GitHub repo. Where is it here? I'll post it here and in the chats. Thanks, Menno. Menno says it was cool. So in that repo, you'll also find the solution for the Sudoku, which you can also actually also use to do the Xdoku that Menno mentioned, because you can just put in a shape that you want, and it will use it.
Interestingly, Menno is not called Menno. Just
Yeah, so
fun fact.
I'm assuming. Well, I'm not assuming that he wants his real name to be shared here.
Yeah.
So MNO just pronounces Menno to me. So
Right.
yeah, that's it. I hope you enjoyed it.
It was beautiful. Yeah, it was mind bending,
Yeah.
and
Yeah, thank you.
thanks.
Really interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, you're welcome. I like actually how well LiveShare worked for us tonight.
I'm just, I'm standing in awe because, this is like we had 8 people fiddling with the same source code and sharing a repo, no network hiccup, no, destroying somebody else's workflow, apart from a couple of glitches in editing somebody else's file. But yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, there is actually a known bug in Calva. When I have time, I will try to solve it. But I have other priorities now. But when I paste here now something, it will immediately disappear again. Do you see that in the screen?
Yeah.
So, when I now undo, then it will come back. So that's a known issue in Calva, combined with LiveShare, and it has to do with the host being in the same file but not on the. I'm not sure when it happens exactly, but if you use this in anger, as they say, then you will have this problem now and then you have to remember just undo, and it will be back. Okay. Yeah. Any feedback, tips for me? Things that I might do differently next time. I'm always very eager to learn about how I can improve these things. So,
I think the whole experience, it shows that you prepared for the event and you have done your homework to have everything ready, and you could copy and paste any moment in time what was needed. So that's pretty much what's needed to have everybody going forward without being blocked. And I have been doing dojos myself in a different format for years, and I like the idea of using games, solving games as exercises, because it doesn't require you to know libraries, to know nothing. Now, core logic is a bit of an advanced thingy, so I would not recommend this for a complete Clojure newbie. It would be super confusing, but I think it was a very fun exercise.
Thanks.
And it went very smoothly.
Yeah, thank you. Actually, when I worked at Philips until this summer, I did lots and lots of coding dojos, and about a super wide variety of topics, from things like pair programming and TDD up to, functional programming and so on. Nobody did functional programming there, so it was new to most people. So I had 2 consecutive coding dojos, one about Clojure for newbies, and then about core logic, again for newbies. And I did this coding dojo with people who had basically only seen Clojure once, and it went very well, I have to say. I mean, it was, of course, in a room where I could look at everybody and see that they needed assistance. And it was also, I had a bit more time then. I think we took about 4 hours, maybe, 3 hours probably. But it worked quite nicely, actually. So everybody was really enthusiastic about the evening. So
yeah.
But you have to go slow then. Yeah.
Yeah, and let's call him Menno. Says we could remake the Oh No game again. So that was a subject, another game that I used as a subject for one dojo. It's a game developed in Amsterdam. It's a game you can download on your phone. It was made by the Q42 folks, I think, in Amsterdam. But yeah, it's just a Sudoku kind of feeling game
Right.
with small hints on a bigger board, and you need to either put numbers or let's say blocks or walls in order to solve the puzzle. It's also fun. I wonder whether you could core logic it. That can be complicated, but maybe for the next time. Let's see if I can quickly find
I've
a
never
link
heard
to the
about it, so I
game.
have no clue what it's about. But
I'm gonna post the link on this chat.
yep.
Oh, you can play it online now on the browser. Interesting.
Okay. I'll have a look at it.
Yeah. So have a look at it and comment whether you would actually apply core logic to it, because I think it's I would have no idea where to begin.
Right. Yeah. So there is, of course, two questions. One is in principle core logic suited, and the other is how would you on earth do that?
Yeah.
So is it suited? As most of the time, it's about, do you have some kind of system of rules that you want to find a solution to? That's on a very high abstraction level. That's what you can do with logic programming, whether it's in Clojure or in Prolog or whatever. And how to do it then? That's a whole different ball game, of course.
Yeah, indeed. So yeah, I think as Mano mentions, it is really the case that you do have a set of rules, which is pretty much the game in itself. It explains you the rules that you have to follow in order to solve the puzzle. It is a Sudoku-like puzzle with same kind of board split in cells, and you need to put either numbers or walls, and you need to follow a couple of math tricks to know what numbers go in what cells. But yeah, okay. So that's it's complicated. But I'm curious to hear your comments on whether core logic would be the tool you would use to tackle that one.
Yeah, I'll have a look at it for sure. Thanks.
How long have you been working, or are you using core logic at work?
No, I'm not.
Okay.
No, like I said, to me, it's really like there are obviously cases where core logic can do the job much better than you programming it. I mean, if you would have to program a Sudoku solver yourself with just Clojure core, I wouldn't really know where to start, especially if you don't want to do a full exhaustive search of the search page. And as you can see, if you know a bit about core logic, then it's. I mean, the code that you have in the end it's only a few lines, right? So it's an extremely powerful tool. So for me, it was like, yeah, I think there will be cases also in my day-to-day job that where I think, this might be something that I can solve with core logic more easily than any other way. But I haven't run into that so far. But I would not be surprised if that happens at some point.
My feeling is that there have been many opportunities along the way to actually apply core logic, but in the rush of the moment, I just went on with Clojure core or whatever other simpler library, maybe math combinatorics, pushing myself to the limit. But then it was too much either of a mental switch to really focus on core logic as a viable solution, or I don't just, it feels like there's too big of a step to get into it. But then the moment you realize your problem is as complicated as being, a warrant of core logic being adopted, it's too late. You have too much code under the bridge, and just move ahead.
Yeah, that's always a challenge. You have to spend a bit of extra time and therefore money if you want to apply these things. And if you do that only once, then maybe it doesn't pay off. If you do it 10 times, then maybe it does. Yeah. I don't know the answer to that.
And did you ever try like rules engines, thinking of Clara rules specifically in Clojure land?
No, not personally. No.
Okay.
But it is, by the way, extremely cool that you have one language, Clojure, where you can do normal programming, well, actually functional programming and logic programming just seamlessly together, right?
Yeah. I am usually kind of scared of multi-paradigm languages because mixing two
Scala.
things to didn't want to mention anything, but yeah. If your language as a language wants to cater for too many different ambitions, so to say, it doesn't necessarily end up so well. Clojure on its side, it has the fact that it is not the language itself that tries to lend itself into many different things. It's just, it kind of works because there's a very little language in the whole shebang. And it's just a list of tokens.
Yeah, in the chat I see that Menno is now in need of some mental support, I think.
Yeah.
I think I accidentally hurt him deeply by mentioning Scala in this context.
Yeah.
Sorry, Menno.
Yeah. He has some history with Scala.
Right. Yeah, maybe I shouldn't actually say these things because I don't.
Well, it's I don't know. I said that on record here at the meetup many times that I really tried to like Scala and I failed. But that's just me, my personal experience. It's just not well suited to my way of doing things, I'd say.
Yeah, I think in general the danger of multi-paradigm. I mean, and I'm not saying Scala right now. I mean any multi-paradigm language. I mean the danger is that especially less advanced people will start using whatever they think is the simplest thing, and that's when for beginners and maybe intermediates that's not always the right thing to use, and then you get some poor maintainable confusing code. And I think that's the danger of these multi-paradigm things. And the advantage of a pure functional in this case, because that's what we are doing. The advantage of pure functional is that you can only do it in a functional way. So you're basically forced to properly understand as a beginner the functional way and use it.
Yeah.
Instead of falling back to whatever you already knew before.
Yeah, and you can also see in Clojure land as the year over year. There were a few libraries that I think kind of break the rule, being super heavy on the macro side of things, which can make it hard, especially for newbies, to really understand what they're reading, because it's really hard for people to learn how to read Clojure, Lisps in general. It was hard for me, at least, as a first Lisp I ever confronted myself with. And if you do macro, then you're breaking the rule because of the evaluation order is not accountable anymore. And the things like nlive for templating was something that always scared me to death because it was pretty much all macros. Or even Composure, which has been super popular, it's now losing market share. My feeling is that because there are other options which make things a little bit more Clojure or functional in a way, without the need to resort to get a macro as the get not being a function but being a macro, stuff like that.
Right.
But in general, Clojure indeed is a good thing that allows for logic programming to happen without breaking the rule to some extent. You did mention that you have Clojure land and logic land, and some things come from one field, some other things come from the other, and it feels like you can get to a point where when that distinction doesn't matter anymore too much. But if you really want to grok it, the fundamentals of it, it feels like you need to know how it is implemented, because I see everything returns a function. All of those core logic functions return functions themselves. And functions, what kind of functions, what arity, what's the semantic, that's something that is implementation detail in core logic, I guess.
Yeah, okay. I don't know. I kind of have a different feeling, but it's just a feeling that it's enough to understand the concepts very well, and the implementation shouldn't really matter. Of the library itself, I mean, the core logic library. But yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, what I mean is like the confusion that we had before between the equal versus double equal function, when to use what and why, and what type of a thing you need in a specific place. Do I need a constraint? What is a constraint? It's a function, apparently, because if you create a constraint, it returns a function. And the details of how everything worked together, eventually you need to understand that, because otherwise I also had many times exceptions because I was using things were in the wrong place. But to really understand that, it feels you need to dive into it a little bit more. And maybe habit is enough, but if you want to understand, then it's probably a bit hard.
Yeah, it could very well be. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I don't mean to just diminish any value of it. I'm just
I know.
Thinking out loud.
Yeah, it's. I think we'll only know once we start using this in anger, right? So for now, we can just speculate about it. But yeah, it might very well be. Yeah.
All right. When I start to blabber this much, it means I'm tired. I think we are approaching the end of the meetup. Is anybody else did anybody else want to add anything, comment on anything, show us anything else?
We sleep, Venom says.
Thank you for speaking in plural.
He himself.
All right.
And
royal we indeed. Pluralis majestatis, as they said. All right. Then I'm gonna officially close the event for tonight. A big, giant thank you to Stefan for the event tonight. It was super well prepared, and it's so much fun to participate.
Thanks, my pleasure.
Yeah, thank you.
Looking forward to the next workshop/dojo you will be holding in this meetup. We'll see.
Hopefully in real life then.
Yeah. So you're saying next time is going to happen in 2022? I see. Okay.
Well, yeah. I hope that somewhere in the summer things will be different. Yeah, but we'll see.
Yeah, probably. As a meetup organizer, I don't think I'm gonna do any in-person event. Definitely before, I would say, next year. Maybe this winter. Maybe when a good percentage of the population is vaccinated, but then likely next year, I think.
Yeah, I was thinking earlier today. I was thinking, once things start getting back to normal, what will happen, right? I mean, it's super nice that we can now have this online meetup. I mean, like I said in the beginning, I could not have attended if it was not online, right? So afterwards, when things start getting back to normal, will we have some hybrid? And that will have its own issues, right? I mean, if you have a few people being together in a place, physical location, and a few others being online, that creates some sort of inequality between the participants. That's not nice, right? I mean, I have also that experience at work, where you have online meetings, where 3 people are in the same room and 2 are not, right? That's not nice, because the people in the same room have a different form of communication and participation in the meeting than the others.
Yeah.
So I'm curious how that will work out.
Yeah, as an organizer, again, I think I would prefer to not mix the things, that online versus physical presence, because it is indeed complicated for everybody to enjoy. But the only thing I might think of is to maybe live stream the event, but then without guaranteeing any interaction with the online audience, because if you have 10, 15 people in the room, chances are either you have somebody, but it's complicated. It's almost impossible to have a very fluid exchange between physical presence and online.
Yep.
I don't think it works.
Yeah, I agree. Yep.
So we'll see.
Yep. Thanks for listening to me and rambling.
Yes.
And it was nice to see you guys again.
Likewise, absolutely. Thank you. Thanks for everyone to come tonight with us.
Thanks for organizing, Carlo.
Yeah, thanks, Carlo. Yeah.
Well, I did nothing. Stefan is to take all the praise tonight.
Awesome. If you don't make sure that the meet happens every time again, then it doesn't, right?
Yeah, I'm reaping the fruit of more than 10 years of constant meetups. So for this specific event, I was really, I'm working like 14 hours a day for like 2 weeks already. So I could not really possibly do anything. So it's actually super nice for me to have people such as Stefan coming up with great ideas and making an entertaining night for everybody to join and participate. So thanks again, and hope that you do it more often, because of what I just said. It allows me to do very little, just the sending on the link.
Yeah, I will keep it in mind.
All right, stop blabbering. I'm gonna stop the recording. So 3, 2, 1, go.